Welcome to this video, which is part of the 2021 Lund Contemporary Festival. And I also say welcome to Fernando Garnero.
Thank you.
You're composer and doctoral student at the Malmö Academy of Music.
Yes.
And you're here to talk about your research project and your artistic work.
Yes.
So very much welcome.
Hi. As David told you, I will introduce my research project and my artistic work. My research project, which is toward extended and highly diversified composable spaces. So what is a composable space? A composable space is a term with the Argentinian based in Paris composer and researcher Orazio Baglione coined. He's a very recognized theorist and composer of electroacoustic and mixed music. So we could define this term as a playground of object interactions and operations that are constructed on various superimposed planes in a multilocal approach. That is an Orazio Baglione quotation that speaks about this subject very well. So there is some of the concepts or activity which can maybe explain a little bit which is the sense of this term. It is not exhaustive, it's just some examples. So as you can see, it can take partially or a lot of different parts. It's not about just our technical tools, but also our conceptual tools and how we draft all this composable space and how we organize it. So why extended composable spaces? So in this research, I try to resume a lot of my my work of over the last 10 years. This work led me to conceive different strategies for extending the tools used in musical composition and to try to define the performance body, the musical instrument and gestures and space also as objects of this given composable space. The explicit difference between these objects convoked within a work also implied an heterogeneous and multiple approach to its organization and composition, as well as the search for transversal operations that could be created by the relationship between very diverse dimensions, scales, and temporalities. So maybe here we can have a graphic on which we can see how this term that Baglione used normally for electroacoustic, electronic, and mixed music, maybe how we can use it as a depart point for our composable spaces, which became more and more diversified and extended. Hybridation, that is one of my main subjects on my last years of works. So this, the use of complex sound objects which have different and very diverse dimensions that could be at the first categorized as we normally do, musicians belonging to noise or harmonic on inharmonic sound, or that I call reference or auratic sounds, which is quotations or stylistic quotations or just recuperation of any object to be recontextualized. So you can read beside me all of the different things that I'm using in my last years, and I will show you a little extract of a piece on which we can have an example of these hybrid complex sound objects.
First. 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 First.
Another example of hybridation is this work Fabula, which is an audiovisual work which I realized with other artists. So another very important point is multi-scale sounds, which are always or more of the times passing through multidimensional sound dispositifs. So sound dispositif on which the sound diffusion is made by very different kind of devices. So this was an extract of Neon Pig, which is a piece for hybrid ensemble and electronics, which was created in BFM Festival in Australia in 2017. I could identify three key implications of my current and future compositional practice. The use of hybrid or modular instruments, and also the use of hybrid or modular settings made with multiple sound diffusion sources. So speakers or transducers piezos, and other things. Also, the confrontation of unpredictable or poorly predictable equipment or phenomena, instruments as lo-fi instruments or equipment as feedback phenomena, confronted with predictable phenomena, equipment, and instruments. And in the third place, the systematic creation of multidimensional sound spaces, which are made of superimposition of diverse sources. One of the hypotheses underlying this research subject is that in this environment, which we could describe as object-oriented composition, we propose a redefinition of objects and actors to constitute hybrid devices and the space they occupy as multidimensional. There you have an example of one of the details of a controlled feedback system within a normal amplified ensemble. That is for another piece on which we have a solo double bass player, amplified double bass player, with another double bass on stage who has 8 transducers on it. Transducers are devices which will sound just in the moments on which we will put it on a surface, on a resonating surface. So in this work, we have this multidimensional dispositive, which is passing the sound through the instrument to the 8-channel space diffusion sets and the double bass on stage with the 8 transducers. This dispositive is for the piece Mutante Amniotica, which was a commission of the Biennale di Venezia and on which was premiered in 2018. So, augmented hybrid instruments and embodied sound. So with regard to these instruments or any physical object performing a similar function, these kind of hybridizations can take place in several ways. With real-time signal processing of traditional acoustic instruments can be one of them, is the most normal. But also that I might call prosthetic devices, on which I'm using mobile surface transducers which scan the instruments, motors, inner speakers, piezos, and other things which are sounding through the instruments, and that at the same time reversing the normal relationship between electronics and an instrument, on which the electronics is modifying the acoustical sound. In a lot of my pieces is the opposite. This is the instrument which is modifying the electronic sound. So you can see all different kinds of prosthetic devices or hybrid devices that I developed on these past years, or that I will develop on the future. So, which is that is the setting for this piece, on which you can see the double bass with the position of the transducers and the technical needing for this piece. So, other of the fields on which my composable spaces, the composable spaces of that I create or that I make emerge for my pieces, there is a lot of different fields who can be in there, not all always at the same time, but the principle of this extension of these composable spaces is the juxtaposition of different practice on one composable space. One of them is algorithmical composition tools. On the case of this piece Allegretto, Dynamogramme Allegretto actually, I use Markov chains in order to create derivated sound morphologies from a few bars of famous Beethoven's 7th Symphony Allegretto. So, right now I will introduce you a very recent work which I have done in Villa Medicis, the place on which I'm doing a residence for a year. And this piece is part of intermediate virtual magazine which is starting. And the subject of this magazine this year was buco or hole. So I have done, inspired on the museum audio guides, numeric and digital audio work. I will show you an extract.
Practical Guide to Holes. Figure number 1, in front, fall. Figure number 2, rise. To the left. Figure number 3, death. But, also, resurrection. That's 4, in front. 5 ways to fall. But also, going up and up again. Figure number 3, sometimes falling into a hole can cause death. As in figure number 3A, B and C. As you can see in front to your left is falling 1, 2, 3 and even 4 times. A hole can be the place where resurrection happens. Or, a well. A crack. A cliff, which is always the closest point to 0.
Another way of hybridization, it is transduction to me. So here is an extract of Transetus number 2. Intermediality. One of the main goals of this research is to create new research methodologies on different ways of interacting and overlapping with other art forms, and on specific ways of making decisions in a transmedia creative context involving several actors. So I will show you one example of that in my artistic practice, a recent audiovisual piece which I had made at Villa Medicis with the French sculptor Jacques Julien.
Then wet it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Then wet it, dear Henry, dear Henry, wet it.
With what shall I wet it? Dear Lisa, dear Lisa. With what shall I wet it, dear Lisa? With what?
With water, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With water, dear Henry, dear Henry, with water.
In what shall I fetch it, dear Lisa, dear Lisa? In what shall I fetch it, dear Lisa? In what?
In a bucket, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. In a bucket, dear Henry, dear Henry. In a bucket.
So that was an extract of the audiovisual piece. It's the 6th of 7 audiovisual pieces, and there is just a little extract of specific site sound installation that I have done in the vineyard of the Villa Medici Gardens. So you can see that there is 8 rows of vineyards, and I hide a rows of little piezos, so little speakers, which work mainly in the high frequencies. And it's an ambisonic spatialization method, which allows me to create different behaviors, spatial behaviors in this sound installation, which normally can run forever. So other thing that had a lot of impact on me is looping, repetition, windowing, and that led me to symbolic granulation, which is instrumental writing, which is inspired on the principles of electric granular synthesis. So I will show extract of Lima El Labor, an old piece on which I'm using windowing and looping. I will show you right now an extract of another piece on which I'm developing a lot this symbolic granulation techniques. Junk space, inspired on Rem Koolhaas term. So the starting point of this research was already made, and it was a couple of research questions, several research questions, on which I just took the most important. So what artistic methodology can be created in order to produce new knowledge regarding heterogeneous and multiple composable spaces? And the second, how can transmedia artistic activity experience be used in the production process of creating new tools for artistic research? The ongoing research, to me, besides my artistic activity, which is also artistic research, I am working on residence reports about my 1-year residence at Villa Medici. In this year, I'm working a lot on my music, but also I'm doing a lot of intermediate work with other artists. So it's one of the points that the most important things that I'm trying to point out. So focusing on intermediate collaboration and how we manage to create an environment on which we can work with several heads at the same time in one object and not superimpose things one to another, but more exchange, and how we make emerge this context of decision making in this particular context of transmedia creative work. And I'm very far of that, and because, as you can see, these extended composable spaces make me visit a lot of different artistic musical places. Other which is very interesting to me is algorithmical composition, and it's for that that I contact the mathematics department on Lund University, hoping to collaborate with one or several mathematicians in papers or just tools, computational tools or any tool, in order to create different ways of using Markov chains, not just in instrumental writing, but also for electronic synthesis and sound spatialization. And I could do several different things to point out the highly diversified and heterogeneous character of my composable spaces. One of that I'm pointing out a lot is symbolic granulation, embodied sounds, hybrid and augmented instruments, and performative works. Thank you.